Hey readers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire Books, and I just wanted to record a quick review of a book that just really took me by surprise with how much I loved it. And that was A God Strolling in the Cool of the Evening by Mario de Carvalho. And this was just such a great book. So it's a book translated from Portuguese, and it is historical fiction set in a fictional city in the Roman Empire. And the main character is a man named Lucius, who is a duumvir. So basically he is the leader of his city, but it's a small sort of provincial city that nobody cares about. So he's like a big fish in a small pond. And he is really kind of dealing with his own ethical limitations in an empire where he is expected to do certain things, especially if he wants to be powerful and respected, but he doesn't necessarily feel comfortable doing them or being them. And in the meantime, there's a powerful Christian sect in his city with a very charismatic female leader who obsesses him a little bit. And so the book has, these little plot lines going on. And in the meantime, some Moors from North Africa are also moving through the countryside and invading. So he has a military threat. He has the fact that he doesn't just fit in with people normally anyway. And he's having a weird infatuation with someone who's a member of what his neighbors perceive to be a dangerous cult. So you would think that this would make for a very dramatic plot line, and yeah, it's pretty dramatic, but it's not really high on the action. This is really a book that is about a person's internal state and their responses to things that are happening around them, and kind of a lot of navel-gazing and people deciding who they are and responding that way. This book is very emotional, but it's also very understated. It's very slow, and you really feel like you're sinking into the life of Tarkissis, like this fake town that the author has created for his characters to inhabit. And on just a normal literary level, and as a Roman history buff, I just really, really loved it. So, emotionally speaking, I just thought that Lucius was such an amazingly well-realized character. He is not perfect, and he has his foibles. Some of them are related to the fact that he's quite Roman and is very attached to the idea of Romanness, which I'll talk about in a moment. But, he is sexist and a little bit xenophobic in the way of all Romans, but he's also not trying to be a bad person. And he also does have some moral limits that other Romans around him do not have. He's not interested in gladiatorial games or in bloodshed. He doesn't like to watch people get into wrecks at the chariot races. He's a very serious, maybe a self-serious person who just wants to read books and think about serious matters and do the right thing. And it's interesting to kind of watch him move in a world where these attitudes cost him socially and politically, but he also can't be something other than what he is. He's very steadfast and true to his principles, and he has a supportive wife who is very, traditionally a Roman woman, but she also does occasionally, let her feelings be known about the things that he's doing, and that's also sort of an interesting relationship to explore. And in the context of Lucius being unable to be anything other than what he is, he's very morally steadfast. It is no surprise that he's attracted to Junia, who is the woman who is basically the ringleader of a Christian sect that's cropped up in town, and in fact in one of his friends' houses. And Junia is interesting because she too is very steadfast and attached to her principles in a way that seems less Roman, more strident, very frustrating. But of course all this frustration is really from Lucius's point of view. So Junia is a very frustrating character, but she's also frustrating because Lucius is frustrating. And the creation of this butting of heads they have is very interesting because I really felt like it was authentic. It was a really interesting depiction of two people who really think that they are right and that they are the way that the world is supposed to be. Encountering each other, maybe enjoying the encounter quite a bit and being frustrated by each other. Or at least that's true from Lucius's end. Junia maybe not. And so that whole conflict is just really interesting. And in the meantime, Lucius also has to make some tough decisions. He raises somebody's house in order to complete the city wall and complete its defenses in a way that's going to be fast enough to protect from an incoming invasion. And people are so mean to him about it. Like, you know, it causes some really serious drama, which I won't spoil, but it's also incredible, like, the selfishness of the people who are around Lucius. You know, the guy who didn't want to give up his property, I mean, yeah, I'd be mad too, but it's also trying to close the city so people don't die, but nobody seems to care about that. The decemvirs who are supposed to back him up and help with administrative duties aren't doing jack. The aediles, who are maybe going to get supplanted by some lower class movers and shakers in the near future, are also useless and, like, not doing what they're supposed to do. And so Lucius is also a person who's having to make a lot of tough choices, with his moral compass really being the only one to guide him, because nobody else is willing to stick their neck out and do anything real. And if he did it the way that everybody else did it, nothing would get done. So it's just such an interesting book, because you're looking at society and you're looking at sort of complacent people, and then at people who don't really fit in because they're different, but you can be different the way that Lucius is different, where people just kind of end up, like, writing you off, but nobody's trying to, like, send you to jail. Or you can be different the way that Junie is different, which is eventually life-threatening because she will not renounce her Christianity. This book is also interesting because it just lets Christianity be weird. So to a Roman, early Christians would have looked pretty weird, especially if you're a very traditional Roman pagan. And this book really does a good job of making that make sense from Lucius's perspective. So instead of just kind of being like, oh yes, this is what Christians are like, but have it be really based on our modern, like, way of talking about that, I thought that De Carvalho did an amazing job of producing a vision of Christianity through the eyes of a Roman man. And actually, I want to use this to transition into the other thing I thought was great about this book, which is that as a historian, you know, it's so hard to step into the shoes of ancient people who saw the world fundamentally differently than we do. And one thing I just loved so much about this book was how good a job it did of recreating what really felt like a living, breathing Roman world. Lucius's values and the things that drive him are so stereotypically Roman. Like, if you read the stories the Romans tell themselves, and, like, now us, about themselves, Lucius is in many ways an exemplary Roman. His idea about how society should work and how people should respect each other, and, like, what his role in the household is and what his wife's role in the household is and why the Christians are so frustrating. All of this really comes through in such a way that feels so real. I was just so impressed with this embodiment of at least one version of the Roman ideal. At the same time, recreating all of the sort of gross mobs and crowds and bloodthirsty spectators and dirty politicians and, you know, alliances forming and, you know, across social lines if there's enough money and, like, power involved. There's just so much to really enjoy about the way that society was built. I think for anybody, but especially for me as a classicist. Like, there are a few references that other people might not catch, but I really did, that just really did it for me too. Like, you know, he's clearly obsessed with the Christian woman, and at one point his wife, she doesn't actually yell at him about it, but she puts her hand on his heart, and he says the woman's name and feels his heart speed up. And makes just an offhand reference to an author. And basically this is a reference to an anecdote about how you can show lovesickness in a person by taking their pulse and then saying the name of the beloved. And if their heart speeds up, then they're in love and they're afflicted, so to speak. So all the little touches, just those little bits of authenticity, just really, really, really did it for me. And I think made Lucius so interesting because he's a person who's trying to live his values, and the social structure that's set up for him to try to do it in felt really real, and also felt limiting in the way that I think it authentically would have felt limited if we're talking about Romans living in Roman times. And so this book was just such a good, introspective, quiet, despite all the drama, thoughtful piece of work. And it took me a little bit to get into it. Like, I had to work the first, like, 30 pages. And then once I sank in, God, I was just in this book, and I could not put it down until it was done. And I wish that more of this author's work was translated into English for me to get, because I would read everything this guy has written. It was just a fantastic book. If you like historical fiction, if you like interesting stories about people trying to be true to themselves in really rough circumstances, if you are just sort of interested in quiet character studies, or if you want to look at early Christians as they might have been seen by other people who didn't know that they were going to win in the end, or so to speak, then this book is really, really for you. I actually highly recommend it to anybody. Just a beautiful work of literary fiction, and I will keep it. I've actually been in the habit of trying to get rid of books that I've read in order to, clear out shelf space and just be a little bit more minimalistic about things. But this is one of the books that I don't want to let go. And so I just put it right back on the shelf instead of the trade pile because that's how much I liked it. So if that sounds good to you, I think you should absolutely check it out. This is A God Strolling in the Cool of the Evening by Mario de Carvalho. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and most of all, happy reading.